Hi everybody, Joe Conkley in the shop. I'm back here at Elderly Instruments. I want to thank Steve Olson and Mike Haynerhoff for providing me with some really great videos in my interim while I was gone over the past month. But I'm back today here during IBMA International IBMA Week, International Bluegrass Music Association Week. Our colleagues Andy Wilson and Dan Palmer are down in North Carolina at the elderly booth at the IBMA convention. Shout out to them. So we're going to look at a iconic bluegrass instrument today. This is a Martin D-18. Let's see, serial number 78277. Let me make sure I get the year on this right. Yeah, 1941. A really great, just funky, beat up, super cool instrument that has needs some work. And the main thing we're going to talk about today is replacing the bridge. This is the bridge that was on there, and you might be able to see here there are several concerns with it. Number one, it was lifting from the top, so this glue joint was compromised. Number two, at a previous time when it was off, you can see how these bridge wings, this area here was thinned out really quite a bit to the point where they're pretty fragile. Another concern that came up was these two plugged holes. So at one point, the bridge came up and the problem was solved by drilling two holes down through the bridge into the top and two bolts to hold them on. At a later point, those bolts were removed and then the holes were plugged with black epoxy. So a number of issues going on there that we wanted to just replace this bridge with a new one. In addition to the bridge, there were bridge plate problems. This is the original bridge plate. And it is, as you can see the holes matching up, it is right here, but on the underside of the top, right in there, in between the X brace in this area, right underneath that bridge. The main problem it has is that it's just, as most Martin bridge plates from this area, is a very thin piece of wood, and it was just wearing out from string tension and the wear of the ball end. So at some point earlier on, someone put a bridge plate patch in, this piece of wood, right on top of the original bridge to try and make it a little more sturdy and to take care of the bridge pinhole problems. But our concern was that top still was compromised as far as the shape of the top. It had the standard rock like this, where there is a dish in front of the bridge, between the bridge and the sound hole, and a bulge back here behind the bridge, to the point where one of the X braces had loosened from the top. The X brace travels right here, and the X brace was right here, right under this bridge wing, had loosened from the top. And so that shape was exaggerated, and that was causing various problems for the geometry of the guitar. So what we decided to do was to remove this plate and the bridge and replace both. So the first thing I did was I use heat. It's actually a chunk of aluminum on a rod with a wooden handle that allows me to insert it through the sound hole and place that chunk of aluminum as I heat it up with a torch right on top of the wood itself. It tends to scorch the wood, but of course when you get that scorching, you know you've got it hot enough to penetrate that wood into the glue line. The first thing I wanted to do was remove this one there, and I did pretty much almost completely intact. One little sliver of it here and one little chunk of the original bridge came with it, but that came off. And the main reason to get rid of that is that it has more than double the thickness of the bridge plate, which puts undue stress on the tone of the instrument. Just puts some extra weight and mass right there in a very important part of the tone producing part of the top. The bridge plate is meant to be a structural element, so they can support the bridge, the ball ends and the pins, but add as little weight and mass, and it tends to restrict the movement of the top. But so it's meant to have a structural element, hold all that together, but restricting that movement as little as possible. So I was able to remove the original plate by, again, heating it up and softening that glue joint in all through the sound hole here.
Money Crash, call 819, Monday, 819.
I use these 3 icing spatulas, which are reworked in various shapes. Usually heat them in a warm water bath to facilitate loosening that glue joint. Again, working through the sound hole to slip it right into that joint, and as that glue is softened, peel it back. One interesting thing to note about this plate is you can see this pencil line right here and another right there. That's on the interior. You can also see that there, this bridge plate is tucked into the X-brace, which is a feature that Martin used to do all the way through 1941 at least. I'm not sure where that line is, but it added another structural element. So that brace that came by there had a little cavity relieved there so that you could tuck that brace right underneath the bridge. It helped it to stay pretty stable, but of course when things started to move and if one of the braces come loose, it actually puts even more stress on the whole system. So it's kind of a plus and minus, but it is makes it a little more challenging to remove it too. But I did, when I put the new plate in, I did maintain that feature. I'm not sure, AJ, if you want to try looking inside the instrument, because I have a mirror in here.
Okay.
And we can, I don't know if we can see the original, there it is, right there. That light colored piece of wood is a brand new piece of maple. That is that new bridge plate. You can see it right in between that X-brace. The 2 holes are just the E-string holes that I have already drilled out. But there's the new bridge plate right there. So let's pop this mirror out of here so it doesn't rattle around in there. Put the guitar on. So first I replaced the bridge plate. I used the client, the owner of this instrument, provided me with a really interesting piece of wood to make that bridge plate out of it. I don't know if you can see the writing on it. 100-year-old Michigan maple from a piece of tongue and groove flooring. So you can see the saw marks here. I was able to saw a blank off the back side there. So really nice, stiff, dense, tight-grained maple for that new plate. So that allowed me to make the replacement plate pretty much the same dimension as this. I did actually make it. This is around 90 thousandths thick. I made it around 100,000 or 95 thousandths thick, but the same shape and everything. So just that new, fresh, stiff, dense piece of wood is really going to be quite a bit stiffer and more structural for the instrument. And during that gluing process, I also glued that brace down. And when that whole thing was done, I was able to change the shape of this instrument. So that bulge on the back side is quite a bit less, and this dip in the front has changed also. So that basically changed the position of the top, and it just helped in any number of different ways. So let's take a look at the new bridge. I've already got the footprint or exact outline of the bridge that I wanted to, which is as close to this as I could get it. And I have, and the next step that I would do is to fit this surface to the top surface here to try to make sure that that is as close as I can get it to where I want to end up with. And then that allows me to shape the top. The first element of the top that I want to shape is this arch right here of this middle section where the bridge pin holes were. Actually, I jumped ahead there. The outline, fit the bottom, and then drill the holes. Okay. Then I start shaping this middle section arch, which is an arch to mimic the arch in the fretboard. It's around a 16-inch radius. I have my handy dandy Stuart McDonald radius gauge, 16 inches, and I can match that to it. So it's a pretty nice 16-inch radius. It also has built into it a couple other features. It is slightly taller on the base side than on the treble side. So when I fit a saddle in here, I'm going to be able to have a saddle that matches the radius and will be a similar height all the way through it, because I'm trying to get the saddle also to have a slightly taller on the base side to accommodate the movement of the bass string and basically how a player plays to keep it playing clean and buzz free. So I got that. And now the next step here is I want to start introducing the shape of these wings. I've already cut out some of the meat there, but now I've reestablished this line here. That's another thing about this original bridge. It has been sanded, and that line has really been blurred and rounded off probably when these holes were plugged. So what we want is a nice crisp line there where the bridge wing then transition into that radius center position. So, and then after that, we will round this edge and then create this rounded back edge too. You can see I've got my lines already drawn there, what I want to do. Let's go back in the machine room and I can show you how to create those bridge wings. It's a little noisy in here, so I'm going to try to get you all ready for that. So I'm going to do it right here on this stationary belt sander. I'm going to use the curved end of this belt sander to create that wing. So what I have here is a pretty straightforward little, this is just a board that is attached to the edge of the sander with a hinge there, and I've got a little piece of wood here glued to the edge, which will catch this pointed edge of trusty 2x4. We've had this for a while. Save me. We have saved it. This is one of a lot of shops. Folks have various machines dedicated and set up to one job. That is the only job that this 2x4 does, and it has been here for a long ass time. But that's the only job it does. So what it allows me to do, actually, what it allows me to do is to use my foot actually to establish a thickness for that bridge wing. So the further out this 2x4 is, the more space there is in here, the thicker that bridge wing goes. So I've got my trusty digital calipers here that will allow me to measure the thickness of this bridge ring. I'm shooting for around 110 thousandths, just a little less than 1/8 of an inch. And again, so first thing I'll do here is use my super accurate foot wedge on the 2x4. So now I know that I'm just touching the top of that bridge wing now, and I can start from there. I'm going to get my hearing protection on this. And if you have your hearing protection handy out there in the audience, please put it on now. Safety glasses too. All right. So first thing I'll do is turn on the dust collector. Barely touch the top of that. My foot wedge. A little more.
last curve established by the drum, right up to that pencil line, and repeat it over there, and make sure that you're 110,000 approximately. We've got about 130,000 right now.
So that's pretty much it there. I have each of these to a little more than 110 thousandths, and I will clean up this line, make it as square as I can to this front edge, and clean up these sanding scratches with some hand tools, some scrapers and sandpaper, and that will get those two bridge wings exactly where I need it. Then I can proceed with sanding this curve here, where I will take a curve that is from this line here, approximately the thickness of those bridge wings there, to this line here, which is actually, connects these two corners. And I will create a curve there. Depending, the Martin guitars of specific years, like the instruments from the 30s, had a pretty severe, fairly flat curve there. The 40s were pretty similar, but a little less. And then in the 50s on forward, this line actually moves a little more this way. Just some subtleties to different bridge shape, Martin bridge shapes from the different eras. But There we go. I'm ready to proceed with the next step of this instrument. Once I get it all shaped, sanded, and smoothed up, I'll be ready to glue it on to the 1941 D-18. That's it in the shop today. Thanks for tuning in. Share us and like us on Facebook, and we'll see y'all in a couple of weeks. Thanks.